Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and we are live again this week. Now, I'm going to be talking about, there's a lot to break down today, and we're going to begin from, I'm going to take you back 2 or 3 days to Friday, and then I'm just going to move you through to where we are today and where this may go in the coming days. So I'm not going to cover everything from Friday, including the video and the Oval Office, because I'm sure you've all seen it before. I've just grabbed a couple of screen shares here so that you can look at this, but I've got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to whiz through this as quickly as possible. So this was the big interaction. You probably saw Zelenskyy absolutely blew up in the Oval Office. It was over every media outlet possible. There was also this interaction, and there's a lot of things that are coming out now that have been translated here that took place.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them.
So this whole interaction was around saying that what he was doing was grabbing, the Ukrainians were grabbing people off the street, etc., putting them into vans and stuff like that. And Zelenskyy was denying that. So he was saying that wasn't happening. Actually, I could show you 20, 30 videos that is happening, right? But I'm not going to get into that. It's irrelevant to the point. I'm just showing you a couple of things here that actually took place here. But I want to get on to, I made loads of notes over the weekend here. And the reason that got into such a heated fight or debate, whatever you want to say, I'm amazed no one has covered this. And I thought someone would have covered it over the weekend. No one covered this. Okay, so let me take you back. We all know about the minerals deal. It was all agreed. It was all over the, I wouldn't say the mainstream media, but it was over a lot of media and the White House media and things like that. And what was agreed, you can look into this now. Don't take my word for it. Look into it, okay? So what was agreed was that there was going to be a minerals deal, 50%, 50-50, and that the US would do the work, right? So they would take the minerals and Ukraine would get half the money, roughly. I'm sure it's more intricate than that, but that was roughly what was agreed. And everything was agreed. Zelenskyy asked for US military troops, and they said, we're not going to announce that on the news. We don't want that live on the news. So what was actually said is that when it came to the cameras, that Zelenskyy basically didn't do anything that they'd agreed. He started asking for troops on the ground. We want military assistance as part of it. So that's why it didn't get signed. Even though he said he was going to sign it and he flew in to sign it, he basically did a rug pull at the last minute in front of the cameras. That's why Trump and Vance were so annoyed. Okay, so now you've got some context. And again, look into that. Don't take my word for it. You can see this in a lot of places, right? The media won't tell you that because they don't want you to actually see that aspect. So this is what took place. That's why they were annoyed. And here's the absurdity of this. Okay, you ready? Because I thought about this. Actually, this idea came to me in the middle of the night. I had to wake up and write it down. But the absurdity of it. Think about this. If the US is going to do that mineral deal, what do they have to do in the country? They have to put some sort of security there to protect the US interests. They're not going to invest hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars into Ukraine to do all of this mining and collecting all the minerals. They're not going to do that unless they secure their sites, right? So they would have put troops or some sort of security in there anyway. Obvious. And they told Zelenskyy this. It was obvious. But what happened was Zelenskyy wanted live on TV. He was playing some sort of political game. I'm not exactly sure his angle, but I think it was probably to do with Europe and NATO. He wanted them to confirm that. So that's why he kept mentioning about troops. Right, so if you haven't seen the full, there's about 2 or 3 hours of it, by the way. What you may have seen is either the 8-minute clip or the 45-minute segment, but there's a lot more. You can watch all of it, and you really see the man. And I want to distinguish something because I feel as though most people are not distinguishing this. You have Ukraine, and then you have the president, right, Zelenskyy of Ukraine. So when you look at the polls, which I look at all the time, you see the support for Russia, and this is in Western countries. You see the support for Russia versus Ukraine, but then there's now polls on Zelenskyy and the Ukrainian people. So what you tend to see in general is that is quite divided in terms of support, right? I know you wouldn't think that because of the media, but it's quite divided. But what isn't divided is when it comes to the support. They don't try and put anything in the polls around the support of Zelenskyy and the Ukrainian people. So I'll give you an example. I don't mind saying to you, I support Ukrainian people the same way I support Russian people, right? They're not involved. These aren't the people that started the war. It's politicians, it's globalists, it's all these other defense companies who have their lobbyists and interests into the politicians who want the war. And I'll prove that to you in a minute. We'll go through the defense stocks and what's happened. So you've got to distinguish between these things. But do I like or support Zelenskyy? No way. Absolutely no way. You look at this man, you look at how his arrogance and how he interacts with politicians, how he insults people, calls them, we've got it on camera, 3 separate swear words. Okay, he said F Trump, okay, when he arrived at 10 Downing Street. He said that twice. He called Vance a little B, right? So we've got all this stuff. And the arrogance talking over leaders when they're trying to, and you know, all this other stuff. Even when the reporter asked him, do you actually own a suit? Do you own a suit? And he said, I don't wear a costume like all of you. Again, people miss this. He said this on the questions. I don't wear a costume like all of you. I mean, Trump sat right next to him in his suit and tie. Okay, I mean, you got to, and then he said, and I wouldn't wear a cheap suit, right? So people don't watch all this stuff. They don't know all this stuff. They just hear what the media's saying. So there's, again, we've got to distinguish between these things. There's a distinction between support for Ukraine and a distinction between support for the Zelenskyy. And then there's all the, you know, the other stuff around that. We won't go into it, but I've talked before about how wealthy Zelenskyy has become. And he's sort of playing double here because he's become incredibly wealthy in the last 3 years, right? And you don't even get into where that money came from. But at the same time, he says half the money that Biden said he sent to Ukraine, he said Biden's lying. We didn't get half that money. I don't know where the other half went. So there's a lot going on here. Okay, we've got to break all this down. So I want to just start with all of that. The other thing then was, okay, we're going to get into what Starmer's announced and all the troops and everything else. Oh, look at all the dislikes on this video. This is the highest dislikes already coming in I think I've seen in a long time. People don't like the truth, right? This is it. As soon as I give facts that is different to people's mindset and what they see on the news every day, because they've been brainwashed, they start clicking the dislike and they'll leave negative comments and all that. Again, people don't want to do their own research and look at facts. They purely want to be told by the media what happened, and then that's their reality. And if you say anything different, they attack that. It's a weird rationale. My brain doesn't work that way. So it's a very weird rationale when I see all this negative stuff and all the dislikes. Just look these things up for yourself, okay? It's just the facts, right? So anyway, let's continue on. It won't put me off all this stuff, all the negative stuff coming through. Now, the other thing that they're trying to do is they are moving forward with these new military plans. In fact, let's go through some of the shared stuff here. Okay, let's go through a couple of the shared screen items. Okay, so this was what Trump said.
I refuse to bend the knee to their next endless war in Ukraine. I want peace. They want money and they want conflict, even if it means walking us into the brink of World War III, which frankly it is doing, and it's doing it rapidly. I refuse.
Okay, so he's made it very clear what he's looking for. Now, I don't know if you saw, where is it? Okay, as soon as he came out of that meeting, his press person just posted all this. This was all in the space of no time at all. Look at all this, all of these support. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support. Thank you. It goes on and on forever. Now, let me just show you a couple of these, and you be the judge for yourself. Do you notice anything about these retweets or reposts? Just have a look at this. Your dignity honors the bravery of the Ukrainian people. It's the same post. They're all doing the same post. No one finds this suspicious. I mean, am I the only one that finds all this stuff suspicious? Now, we'll get into the defense companies in a moment. We won't go through all of this stuff. But anyway, Trump's looking to halt aid now to Ukraine. And what has Europe responded with? Well, they're going to try and put pressure on Trump and the US. And I think if they try and do that, they're playing a dangerous game because the US could just pull out. I don't know the legalities of it, but imagine they just pulled out of NATO. That would be a brutal land war with Russia and Russia's allies. And would Europe win that or NATO win that without US support? I think that's very questionable. I'd have to run some more models on that, but I think it'd be very questionable. It would be quite brutal. And you even look at, I want to show you the defense breakdown of spending. This is the US spending, okay, for NATO. It dwarfs all of Europe combined with 860 billion. So some of these leaders that say, we don't need Donald Trump, we don't need the US, we can do this on our own. Really, I don't think so. I did model this. I went through this earlier this morning and I modeled it and ran some calculations. They could just never catch up with the defense spending that the US provides. I ran it 20 years into the future and it just would never catch up. It would destroy their economies. So they've got one option and they need, and this is it again, 70% of spending. They need the US now, hold on. Another thing I've got to say as well, I'm going to jump around a bit because there's a lot going on here. Now, with this whole plan, I'm jumping ahead, but this is the other thing. They want to send all these troops, and we've talked before about this, and that it was talked about in that secret meeting, that they said that if they put all these troops forward, it could trigger Article 5 if Russia attacks the UK, British or French troops. Well, yes and no. Okay, you've got to actually look into this in more detail. So it says Article 5 states that an armed attack against a member is an attack against them all. However, it's actually Article 6 that defines what an armed attack is, and more specifically where the attack must take place, on the territory of a member party. Now, I think a lot of these leaders are missing the point on this, where they think, and you've heard this, we've covered it on this channel before, you've heard this, where they've said that by putting these boots on the ground, this could trigger Article 5, and that would force the US into the conflict. Not necessarily. They're thinking of this whole model not with President Trump in the White House. Okay, he's not like, look, love him or hate him, that's up to you. But he's not like some of these other leaders that are going around. Completely different. He's not going to just go along with all of this. And I think it'd be very difficult to force his hand on it as well. I want to keep going through because what actually happened then when he arrived, so Zelenskyy arrived. And in fact, let me give you a little example here as well. I was reading this earlier, it's quite good. Is the rest of the world really entitled to US funding and US defense and the spending? Okay, this is what you've got to think about here. So I saw this example. It says, consider this for a moment, the perspective of friends or allies. Imagine a wealthy man is approached by his friends all the time for loans, which these friends rarely pay back. He obliges out of generosity, but begins to suspect his friends are only interested in his wallet. So he makes an announcement that he's trying to get his finances in order and will not be lending any money for the next 90 days. Do his friends respond with understanding? No. They call the man a criminal and cry endlessly about how their families will starve and the world will fall apart if he doesn't keep filling their bottomless gullets with cash. They even suggest he's deserving of retribution for daring to ask them to support themselves. Now, is that a bit harsh? Possibly, but I thought that was quite an interesting example of what's being said at the moment, that Europe expects the US to just pay for everything and that Europe expects the US to defend them. And you've got to start looking at that and saying, why? Why is this entitlement mentality in existence? I think that's the main question we've got to look at. And even if you look on Statista, which is very unbiased, you look at how much aid has been sent. Well, it's the United States that send the most aid. All of EU institutions combined are nowhere near the US. Germany, the UK, Japan, etc. And again, you look at it and they call it humanitarian aid. Well, it's not. This is the thing I like about Statista, by the way. It's a good website here. The light blue is humanitarian. You can see it's a tiny, tiny slither from each country. The rest is military and financial. And they're all classing these as loans, by the way. If you actually look at the what was sent, they're calling these loans. They're not calling them what Zelenskyy says, that this was all just grants, right? That all these countries gave money and it wasn't a loan. Well, actually, you look at the legislation behind this, and it does say they were loans. This is the financial, and we'll get into the defense stuff in a second. So what happened? Zelenskyy went straight there, by the way. He said he's not going to apologize. Ukraine's not for sale. There was a lot of harsh words spoken about it. But straight away, he had a meeting with Starmer, and then Starmer and Zelenskyy called this emergency summit. And again, it's the same people each time. I talked about this before, but a lot of people wanted me to go into more detail. I think I'll have to do that another time. But there is something called the Young Global Leaders Program, and a lot of these people were groomed through that program. So it's no surprise that what is actually happening, who's involved in this coalition. Yeah, let me just see what else I wanted to mention from all of this. Okay, so he had a meeting with Starmer, and Starmer instantly said that they were going to pick up the support. And I've got here it is. So $1.6 billion missile deal for Ukraine. And what did he say? He said this is for the people, right? He said, this is for the UK. This is going to be great for the UK. It's going to create huge amounts of jobs and prosperity. That's a huge lie. It's an enormous lie. I looked into this. Again, I only had about 20 minutes to go through that aspect of it because I need to get this stream done. But it's a huge lie. It's going to create 300 or 400 jobs in Northern Ireland. He said he's going to open up the supply chains for SMEs. What exactly are SMEs going to do for this defense contract of 1.6 billion weapon systems? It's just nonsense. The whole thing is absolute nonsense. He's spinning all of this. He then went on to, I've got a couple of videos. Okay, let me just show you what happened to defense stocks. Are you ready? In these countries, by the way, you correlate those leaders. Have a look what happened to defense stocks. Wow, what a surprise. Here is what has happened. This is March 3rd. You can see it clearly here. March 3rd took off like a rocket. They all did over the last couple of days. They've gone up like a rocket. And this is what it's about. I've covered before how a lot of these defense companies, they give contributions to a lot of these leaders to help them get elected, and then the leaders have to give something back. This was a couple of things he said then.
Intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air.
Okay, two things. Number one, urgency. They're doing this with urgency. The UK is prepared to put boots on the ground and planes in the air. He's got this real tough talk, you know, but when you actually look at who he is, this is who this Prime Minister is, by the way. This is how tough he is. You ready?
Try and whack it. Yes, this is good. And again. That's it. And again.
Okay. All right, that's enough. We don't need to see any more of that. This is who he is. He talks real tough about boots on the grounds, and he's a strong man. He's not a strong man. That just showed you.
And let me be clear. We agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now we need to deliver together. Finally, we agreed that leaders will meet again very soon to keep the pace behind these actions and to keep working towards this shared plan.
Okay, so they're going to meet again very soon because it's urgent for them now. It's very urgent.
Continues to be. I spoke to President Trump last night. I'm not going to go through the details of that conversation, but I would not be taking this step down this road if I didn't think that it was something that would yield a positive outcome in terms of ensuring that we move together, Ukraine, Europe, the UK and the US, together towards a lasting peace.
Now, honestly, let me ask you a question here. Do you believe him? Do you believe what he's saying there? I don't. I don't believe this conversation he had with President Trump was the way he's making out, that Trump was on board. Oh yeah, you know, yep, go ahead with that plan, definitely, and we're gonna go and we're gonna, you know, we're gonna support you with that. And I just don't believe that that's how the conversation went. And you know, he's already said during the emergency summit that, oh, you know, I put pressure on. He said even before he met Trump, I'm going to put pressure on him. And then afterwards, oh yeah, I put pressure on him. But we all saw the press conference of that meeting. He was not putting any pressure onto Donald Trump. It was the other way around. You know, you've got now this very, very strong arm cabinet in the US, which is what people voted for, right? People voted for that. They want that. And you've got Europe now basically just losing their minds over all of this. Let me get into the next part of this. Now, he's also said, Starmer, right, that they're going to put all these boots on the ground, right? And, you know, the British public are willing and able to fight. And he's doing all this strongman talk, even though he's not a strong man, right? He's very, very weak man. And this is what happens when you elect a socialist. It's not just a socialist government, it's a global socialist government, because it would be not as bad if it was just a socialist government for the UK, but it's even worse because they don't support their own people. They want to support the world's people, right? And they've got no money, they've got no strength. The UK's lost its power, they're in massive debt, they've got no plans for the future except this very small AI program. So there's no strength, there's no power at all. Now, he's okay, I'm just going to play this clip. Okay, so there's all these people going around asking people on the streets in the UK, are you going to fight? And it's not going to be a surprise to you. Listen to this.
You guys live in the UK?
Yeah, we do.
Would you join the military?
No, we're not from this country.
If they say it's compulsory, what would you do?
I'll just go back to Egypt.
Okay, I don't know if you saw that. He said, I'll just go back to Egypt.
Go back to my country. Yeah, I'll just go back to my country.
First of all, I'm not a UK citizen, I'm an immigrant.
I'm Welsh.
No, unfortunately not. I'm not from this country originally. You know?
Where are you from?
Brazil.
Do you live here?
Yes.
Would you go to war for this country?
No.
I'm Pakistani, so
Are you a resident?
I'm a resident. I've got dual nationality.
You guys live in the UK?
Yeah.
So I just don't know what he's thinking. The UK armed forces is so small that he keeps talking about how they're going to go and do this big war with Russia, and that they've done the calculations, and that what calculations have they done? I mean, someone help me out here, because all the models, and you can watch infographics channels and all sorts of things on this. All the models don't show this fast war that's going to be over in no time at all against Russia, even if the US aren't involved. That's not how it is at all. They're gaslighting the public, and it's very, very dangerous. They are marching everyone towards World War III, and that is what's happening. And they're all on board with it. All these young global leader program people, and you look again. I gotta be careful each time I say this. And obviously, I did that not documentary, but that research piece. Most of these leaders are getting ridiculously wealthy from these donors, the defense companies, all the stocks they own in the defense companies. It shouldn't even be legal, but somehow it is. Now, really important thing, I probably should have mentioned this at the start, but what actually took place today is shocking. Let me just read out what Trump said first, and then I'll tell you what happened within hours after this. So Trump said we should spend less time worrying about Putin and more time worrying about migrant, gangs, drug lords, murderers, and people from mental institutions entering our country, so that we don't end up like Europe. Now, the Europeans were offended. They responded to that. They had a lot to say. But you know what happened just a couple of hours after that tweet came out, that post came out? There was yet again another shocking attack in Germany. It was Munich, Germany. Same profile all over again. Someone drove a car into a crowd of people. Now, I honestly wish that I didn't watch that just before breakfast, because it turned my stomach. I couldn't even eat my breakfast for about 20 minutes. It was horrendous, the aftermath. Let's just say there were body parts on the street and some shocking, very, very shocking things. What can you even say about a lot of this that just keeps going on here? This has been a long stream, actually, a little bit longer than usual. I apologize for that. I know people sometimes complain when it goes a little bit over. But this is... Oh, another thing, actually, really important. Can't believe I forgot to mention this. As soon as I did the Epstein, I shouldn't really say the keyword there, video on, was it Friday? Within minutes of that stream ending, I got an email from YouTube. It was like an automated one, a red dollar sign and everything. Instantly saying this video is demonetized, this video has been removed from search, browse features, everything. Like, straight away. I just couldn't believe it. This is the problem, you see. Every time I do these sort of videos where I talk about, even though I think there's a lot being done to bring free speech back, there's still a lot of suppression and censorship of speech. There was nothing offensive that in that video. I was really just exposing the facts that the media doesn't want you to see. So I think there's still a long way to go. You can actually catch the full video because it was even edited. You'll notice that video was under 19. I usually go 19 and a half, just under 20 minutes. You'll see that video is 16, 17 minutes long. It's even edited in 2 parts. This is the shocking thing that goes on now. By the way, I keep forgetting to say, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel here and get on my newsletter, because on the newsletter, I'm just unfiltered and I say things, a lot of things that are going on. But this is worrying. We are going towards war. I think as soon as these troops, these boots on the ground from the different European nations go in, and the most important thing here, another point I should have said at the start was, do you honestly think that Russia, Putin, is going to allow these bases, these NATO bases in Ukraine on their doorstep? It's not going to happen. It's not. There's going to be there's going to go to conflict. I've been talking about this for 3 years. I said this is the final point. And please, because I don't want people to say, oh, he's saying he was right again. Please, you just drop it in the comment if you think what I said 2 or 3 years ago is now correct. Because we've gone through all these stages and we're at the point where they've now announced boots on the ground. Despite the fact they haven't even taken a vote in Parliament on this. He's just announced it. This has to go through Parliament to deploy the British military, by the way. He hasn't asked Parliament. He's just decided upon it. Some of these other nations as well. It has to go through their parliaments. They haven't even done this process. They've just decided upon it. It's shocking what's going on. The defense companies are blowing up. So if you're investing, well, you're probably doing quite well at the moment. But it's really a disgrace what these very small minority of leaders are doing. Instead of moving towards peace, they want war. And it's never at their expense or their children's expense. It's always at the expense of other people's children. And that's how it is. All right. I'll see you on Wednesday. Take care. God bless. God bless your families as well. And we'll speak soon.